Hello, and welcome to another reading from my book, Eternity is the E in Love. My name is Brian Martin. This is my book, Eternity is the E in Love, and Experiencing Meaning and Changing the World with the Power of Love. And today I'll be reading the chapter that's called On Leaving Your Culture When Your Identity is Strongly Pegged to It. There was a time when I needed to leave the Vineyard Christian Fellowship. It had a very powerful culture, and my identity was closely tied to it. The Association of Vineyard Churches was launched in late 1970s and the early 1980s. See the Wikipedia article, Association of Vineyard Churches. Jennifer and I became associated with the Vineyard during the early years when John Wimber, a founder and leader of the movement, was the pastor of the Vineyard that met at Canyon High School. As I recall, the church was affiliated with Calvary Chapel at the time. I was a student at Fuller Theological Seminary. After seminary, Jennifer and I were sent to start a new Vineyard Christian Fellowship in Fresno, California area. Those early years of the Vineyard were dynamic and chaotic. It was like living in the exciting Wild West of a new Christian movement. When I was with the Vineyard, my core identity was, quote, I am a Vineyard pastor. The essence of who I was going to be in the future, and how I wanted people to view me, and all of my activities in life were reflections of I am a Vineyard pastor. It was difficult for me to imagine myself anything other than I am a Vineyard pastor. Having such a strong attachment to the core identity is universal. It is essential to how we function in the world. What is your core identity? Personal identity is one of the reasons why resolving grief after death of a spouse is so difficult. For 20, 40, 50 years, some people's identity is we are Bob and Sally Smith. Their individual identity is woven in with the spouse. When Bob dies, Sally is left searching for her identity. She thinks, I am Bob and Sally. Who is Sally? That takes some adjustment. The same is true when people retire. Prior to retirement, she was, I am Mrs. Jones, the teacher, or I am Deputy Sheriff Kelly. After retirement, one is left searching for who they are and how now they fit into the world. The same phenomenon happens after trauma changes people's lives. One moment, they're fully functional, capable human beings, relatively successful and happy in life. And the next moment, they are, I am a victim, with the unwanted task of trying to make a new identity and a new way of life. Career shifting from a disappointing professional career is another example. You might hear people say, I was an attorney, or I used to practice medicine. It's hard to say, I used to be a doctor, or I used to be a lawyer. It's because being a physician or an attorney is an esteemed position in society. People might ask, why would any sound-minded person give up that identity? The question of who I am now, for some soldiers coming back to civilian life, the transition is traumatic. In the military, the bond between servicemen and women and the identity of being in the military is beyond understanding and the experience of civilians. Consequently, the loss of that identity, that worldview, that common experience, that brotherhood is devastating. I'm certain that our identity affects the way we think about ourselves and how we relate to the world. I'm also certain that humans have some degree of control over what and how we think. And I am certain that many people, perhaps most people, are unaware that they can change the way they think about their identity, their view of their self, and how they relate to the world. Some people are never able to shift or change their core identities. They may not understand culture or identity. They may believe that their core identity is immutable, fixed, as if it was part of their DNA. Some people suffer greatly transitioning away from their core identity to a new identity. In my mind, there is only one aspect of our identity that is constant, and that is that we are human beings. But perhaps evolution will even change that because of our identity. In other words, everyone must be open to the possibility of changing, even your core identity. In the real estate purchase contract, there are contingencies which affect the agreement. Contingencies are the provisions that must be addressed and removed prior to the completion of the agreement. Examples are the inspection contingency. A house must be inspected and found adequate for the buyer. And the loan contingency. The buyer and the home must be approved by the lender. Once those contingencies are removed, money can be exchanged and the deed placed in the buyer's name. For one's identity to be changed, certain contingencies must be removed. The first contingency is understanding what led to the original identity. The second contingency is embracing the new identity and engaging in activities that support the new identity. Once these contingencies are dealt with, the identity is secure. For example, leaving the vineyard was kind of like a divorce for me. I felt betrayed by the vineyard leadership. That betrayal hurt so much that I decided to leave ministry altogether. Betrayal is one of the reasons why marriages fail too. Hold on. Ministry and I were done with each other. During my time with the vineyard, I had a good understanding of what it meant to me and how my identity was tied to I am a vineyard pastor. From the beginning, I knew I wanted to be in a helping career, and ministry in the vineyard seemed like a great way to help. I was aware of the problem of politics in ministry. I watched as many young ministers were sent into the church world only to be eaten alive by the hostile political realities of church polity. That's church politics, church government. I just didn't think that the politics would happen to me in the vineyard culture. The vineyard was new and exciting, and what could go wrong? And I was young, naive, and I was wrong. However, the vineyard culture gave me a context for me to develop and use my gifts, my skills, my talents, and my tools. My personal gifts, talents, and tools are inspiring, empowering, educating, and training people about the spiritual aspects of life. The vineyard was an ideal place to practice. I was part of something bigger than myself. The vineyard culture made me feel special and important. As a vineyard pastor, I held a leadership role, and I officiated rituals and rites. I facilitated people's experience of God. That's a big deal, right? The vineyard culture was super important in how I related to the world and how I saw myself. There are many other aspects of the vineyard culture that related to my being in the world. Things like how to dress. Vineyard pastors dress, at least in those days, they dress very casually. Speaking specific language to the vineyard culture, we had all kinds of different languages within the culture. An example would be the idea of worship, what worship is. In the vineyard, worship is a music session that's led by, usually it's a guitar driven, maybe a piano driven, and that facilitates the worship experience, and that's what worship is. That's an example. The point is that the vineyard culture was very meaningful to me. Understanding what your culture does for you is key to your ability to change. Why? Because culture is an entity, it's an idea, it's an invention, which shapes the way that you think about yourself. We've got all kinds of interesting things happening today. Sorry about that. I'm wondering if you can hear the puppy in the background. Let me get back to that sentence. Because culture is an entity, an idea, an invention, which shapes the way that you think about yourself. When you understand culture as something and it affects you, you can control your thoughts about it, and you can think differently about your reality. When I realized that the vineyard culture was something that I controlled, the way that I thought about when I realized the vineyard culture was something that controlled the way that I thought about myself and the world, I wanted to change. I went back to school and I trained as a marriage and family counselor. My immersion into psychotherapy happened quickly. I am a psychotherapist was a suitable identity, and it came from a community of support, both at school and professionally. The culture around psychotherapy is strong, and it replaced what was missing from my former identity. It was good, except. You probably heard of rebound relationships. Well, these are the relationships formed in the midst of leaving a chaotic relationship. When the emotional disconnect happens while the existing relation, when the emotional disconnect happens while exiting the relationship, there is a need, a strong need for emotional support. In such circumstances, people often find a new relationship without vetting the relationship because, well, we need the warmth and the support of another human being, and we need it right away. Not vetting the relationship is based on emotional need. This is the rebound relationship, and typically they don't last very long. I am a psychotherapist was my rebound identity. I had not vetted psychotherapy. I just jumped into it because I needed a replacement identity. My first problem with psychotherapy was the necessity to label people in order to get the insurance payments. Most people I was seeing did not need a label. They needed support, they needed encouragement, they needed education, caring, empathy, and love. To me, there's a difference between counseling and therapy. Counseling is helping normal people move forward. There's no label in counseling. There is merely helping. On the other side, the word therapy implies disease or injury and the need for healing. Therapy says there's something wrong with people. They need a diagnosis, a billable label. They need a treatment plan. and they need healing. I don't want to think about people that way. It was not what I wanted to do to make a living. I ended up not wanting the identity of I am a psychotherapist. That was my personal decision, and there are many people who need therapy because they are injured and they have a disease and they need healing. Thankfully, there are wonderful people in healing professions like psychotherapists who love helping with a healing process. I am not. I am a psychotherapist. In the meantime, a friend of me told me that a congregation was needing a pastor and I might be a fit for them. I love the identity I am a pastor, just not the vineyard part. I love helping, encouraging, inspiring, and loving people. When I met the people at Cross Church, there was a vetting process. We met, we talked, we listened to see if we had a fit. It was a considered decision. It was a System 2 process, by the way. Thus, we began a wonderful 8-year relationship. My years at the Cross Church were some of the best in my ministry career. To be sure, there were challenging times, but I have more good memories than bad memories. I still love the people of Cross Church. I am pastor while I was there. When I meet these people, they greet me with a hello, and they say, "Hello, Pastor Martin." Let me review the process of leaving your culture when your identity is strongly pegged to it. For me, it was my desire to help that led me to the Vineyard Church, the Vineyard culture. Second is embracing the new identity and engaging in activities which support the new identity. When I am a psychotherapist didn't fit me, I found myself as I am pastor, and I engaged with a vibrant community where I could use my gifts and my skills and my talents and tools in a helping way that fit me. In that culture, I developed all of my thoughts about culture, identity, even my paradigm of love, L-O-V-E. And it is in that context where I discovered I am a loving person. To be the core identity of my life. Not just the core identity of my life. I am a loving person is the universal, basic core identity of every human being. Please underline that sentence. When I am a loving person is discovered and embraced, it transforms the experience of being a human being. We are very complex, and we're like diamonds, a cut diamond that has many beautiful different facets to it that reflect the different aspects of who we are as people. For instance, I am a spouse. That's one reflection of my core, my inner diamond. Another one is I'm a man, and that's another reflection. Others, I'm a grandfather. Another one is I'm a realtor. Another one is I'm a business person. But those are just facets that are carved in to the core of who I am. And who I am and who you are. There you are. Who you are as a person, whether you are aware of it or not, is I am a loving person. I'm Brian Martin. Thanks for joining me today in this book, this wonderful book called Eternity is the E in Love. And I'm looking forward to sharing some more with you next week. Take care. Bye-bye. I love you.